Okay, everyone, we're going to get started. Thanks a million for joining in. I know there's a few people still coming along there. I can see the numbers creeping up bit by bit. You're very welcome to the next session of our county leadership series. So this is very much aimed at county executives and the officers involved at county executive level. So I'm joined tonight with Paula Prunty. So Paula will be popping in and out, helping us out as we go along and giving thoughts and opinions. She has so much experience to add to this area as well. So hopefully you'll enjoy the session and we'll keep it as interactive as possible. But as usual, feel free to type any questions in the chat as we go along, and hopefully we'll get plenty of discussion out of it. So tonight's focusing on teamwork and building networks. So a lot of what we focused on so far has been on your individual roles and your role as a chair or secretary or whatever role it was. Whereas tonight's very much with bringing it all together. How do you make sure that you're working cohesively? And also, how do you try and build networks to get people to help you, because you can't do it all yourself. So that's very much what we're looking at tonight. So as usual, you feel free to type any questions in the Q&A, and we will ask for some interaction in the chat as we go along. And if you can't hear at any stage, just pop out of the webinar and pop back in. It should be working then for you. So in tonight's webinar, what we're going to look at what is a high performing team, because we need to know what actually is a high performing team. And for a lot of people to think that's a team on the pitch, but a team can't be on the pitch without an effective team off the pitch. And you're that effective team. So what is a high performing team? Effective work practices. So what do we mean by that? How can we make it a high performing team? So that's the other area that we're going to look at. And then building networks. So how do you build those people that's going to help you to make your job a little bit easier? So we're going to get you putting a little bit of interaction into this straight away. So in the chat, if you can think at county executive level, so we're not looking on the pitch, we're looking at off the pitch, at county executive level, what do you think are words associated with team? So if you type them in the chat, and Paul will feed back on some of these. So what do you think are words associated with team? I'm thinking of yourselves at county executive level.
Ellen, you have them working early tonight. So people have come in with accountability, communication, a committee working together, committee, which is a very good one. I suppose the main word that joins them as a team at that level.
Exactly.
Communicate, good listener, delegation, people working together with the same aim, fundraising.
Brilliant. And that working together with the same aim is something we're going to talk about a lot, as you know, Paula, this evening. And I think we've mentioned, for anyone who's been on the webinar so far, they've probably heard communication and delegation quite a bit in relation to the roles as well. So yeah, very good ones there, Paula.
Yeah. Yeah. And governance.
Governance.
My favorite word, Lynn. My favorite word. Yeah. So governance. So lots of words there. And I suppose people even thinking of the job they have to do at county executive level. So I suppose we're going to really, well, a lot of you're going to, I suppose, change their view and opinion of how they do that teamwork and networking tonight, really, aren't you?
Yeah, so really, like, we talk about a team, they have to work, and somebody said at the start, that cohesiveness to get the best out of you. And that's really what we want to do tonight is, okay, we have excellent individuals, but how do we make sure we're performing as a high performing team off the pitch? So when you think of yourselves, the county executive, the team, and these are just a few of the things that you're doing. I know if I asked you, there'd be a loads more would be popped in the chat. But things, meetings, fixtures, finance, fundraising, development, disciplinary, PR, match officials, logistics of things, education, communications, general queries, and more. And like I would question, there's not many entities out there that have to perform all of that. And this is what you're being asked to do as volunteers in a high performing team. So we're under no illusion that this isn't easy. But what we're hoping tonight is that we'll show that, yeah, look at the amount of stuff that you do. So if you're not a team, some of these will fall through the cracks. So that's what we need to make sure is that you're working as a team, that all of these are performed at the highest levels within your county. So for high performance teams, they are hard to create, but trust us, they're worth the effort. So if you put in the effort at the start of the year to get the structures and have the conversations, that communication that you kept talking about, it will be worth the effort, because it'll actually be less effort in the long run. There'll be no duplications. Everyone will know what they're supposed to be doing. So high performing teams, they're hard to create, but they are worth the effort. So hopefully after tonight, you put that little bit of effort in to try and get your team up to the highest performance levels. And everyone will know Steve Jobs and how successful he was. And he says great things in business are never done by one person. They're done by a team of people. So even for yourselves and an executive, it can't be one person holding on to all the information or one person wanting to do all the jobs. And sometimes you talk to that person and they're like, oh, I can't get anyone to help me. And that's not necessarily the case. It's just that you won't give anything to them, or maybe the wrong people are being put into other positions and you are being left to do it. So it's making sure that you surround yourself with the right people. And that's why we've built in the networks piece tonight as well. So great things will happen and are happening in our counties because of great teams and high performing teams. So that's what we're hoping to help you with tonight, is a few tips to keep those high performing teams in place. So what I would ask you just for a couple of seconds is to think of a high performing team you know. You don't need to write them in the chat or anything else. Just think for a second. And what makes them high performing? Because there's no point in us talking about high performing when we don't really know what makes them. And there's a few examples coming up on the screen there, but think for yourselves. Like if you think of the rowers, like if they don't all work as a team in synchronization, they're going nowhere. They're going round in circles. So how often have we heard even in our own meetings, Jesus, feels like we're going round in circles? Well, that's how the rowers feel if they don't all work together. So it's very much in tandem. Everyone know where the aim is, as was said in the chat there a while ago. I threw in there as well, people give out about health services and everything else, but I know about you, but all the videos and everything I've seen over the past few months of how our doctors and nurses have had to work together, and under circumstances of complete uncertainty, the unknown was phenomenal. So how did they get high performing teams within their own units to make sure all things happen? We've all seen the air shows where anything going out of sync just throws the whole thing out and can be extremely dangerous. We all learn from the geese, and in the Formula One, it's phenomenal to watch just how quickly that team of people can get that car back out in like seconds. But if one of those people, you can see the amount of them there's 20 working on that pit stop. If one of them doesn't do their job, the whole thing falls apart. I suppose that's what we're trying to say to you for your high performing team. How do you make sure that everybody knows where they fit in to make this team high performing, so that you don't feel like you're going round in circles or going backwards? You always feel like you're going forward as a team together, everyone knowing what the final aim is. So that's where we want you to go after tonight. So what is a high performing team? A high performance team is a group of highly skilled people, which you all are. You're in the roles, people have put you in there, working in cross-functional areas and who focus on achieving a common goal. And I think that's very applicable to cross-functional areas, because yes, you have your role to do, but realistically, if you look at it, how many different areas of the county are you having to work on or be aware on? So it's very much across different areas, but the team is across those different areas. They're aligned with and committed to shared values and vision. So if at the start of this year, you don't have any idea of what your final values are, your vision, what you want to see at the end of the year, you're already off on the back foot. You're going round in circles. So even to dedicate one meeting yourselves to say, okay, here's the top 3 things we want to achieve by the end of the year, well, then you're all going towards that common objective. And that's so, so important. And that's why teams are high performing. A highly effective team, they're innovative in problem solving. So when there's a problem, it's not, well, do you know what, I'm just going to leave that to Paula, let her solve the problem. No, we'll actually come up with it as a team, be innovative, come up with a solution to what we're trying to do, and that they have high levels of communication and collaboration. So there's nothing worse for a county executive meeting or any meeting where you're supposed to be a member of this group and you walk in and you hear about something that has been done and this is coming up and everything, and you're meant to be part of that group and didn't know about it, never mind about all the people outside that were supposed to know about it. So that high level of communication and collaboration is key, that you're all working together, you know what's happening. Everyone doesn't need to do the points, but you know that they're happening, that because of that communication. And then you're aiming for that consistent and superior results across the board. So that's what a high performing team is. That's where you're looking to go. The characteristics of it: effective work practices, which we're going to come to in a second, mutual respect amongst leaders and team members, and that's so important, that you are respecting each other. You might not always agree with each other, which we said the last night, but you come up with an agreement before you leave meetings, etc., and then you respect each other on that. That shared vision, which we'll talk about, and then open and clear communication. So for the effective work practices, so when we're talking about effective work practices, a plan of action behind high performance building teams is critical. So what is your plan of action? So as we said, for yourselves as a county board, what's your plan of action? And we're going to talk about this in LGFA terms when we get to the bottom of it. Without proper planning and necessary resources deployment, high performance teams cannot be made effective or efficient. So if you don't have the resources that you need, how are you going to get there? So looking at those areas, it's the foundation of high performance teams, and ineffective guidelines will cause problems in organising and evaluating information and hinder risk-taking attitudes, creativity and innovation. So if there's not guidelines there as to how you can bring ideas to a meeting, well then somebody's probably not going to bring them and you could miss out on an opportunity. So in LGFA terms, and these are the questions you need to be asking yourself after tonight. Firstly, are you as an executive member completely clear on your plan for the county as a full executive? And be honest about it to yourself. Do you know currently what is the plan for your county as a full executive? Not just what your plan is or what one other member of the executive is. Do you as a full executive understand it? Have you and your subcommittees clear role descriptions or terms of reference so that you know what your role description is, what you're supposed to be doing, when you're supposed to be doing it? And we have the booklet there on our website with the role descriptions, but it's important for you to pull that down to your own county and discuss, because there's other little bits and pieces, as you know, that's specific to your own county that may need to be added to your role description or removed from your role description because you have assistants or whatever. So ask that question again, the clear role descriptions or terms of reference for your subcommittees, so that it's very, very clear what the work practices is, those effective guidelines that you're going to have. And do you have the resources required to complete the roles? So if you're looking, maybe you've set off the fundraising committee and they're off to do it, but have you given them resources required? What do you want to achieve? What do they need for it? If they're going to need printing for stuff, have they access through the county executive to do it? So what resources are going to be required to complete the roles? So these are all things that's really important to actually get an effective work practice in the first place. But you need to be honest and ask yourselves these questions as we go along, because they're all part of becoming a high performing team. The next one, that mutual respect, which we said is key among leaders and the team members. And realistically, anybody in the county executive is a leader, but we do know that the chairperson has to kind of take control of stuff in relation to meetings and everything else, and the chair and secretary tend to be, I suppose, the chief administrators in relation to it. But skilled members of high performance teams are aware of and recognise each other's expertise and working methods. So even have you asked each other, like, what other areas of expertise you have? Because you could be missing something in your team. Maybe you're paying for somebody to do design and print when you have somebody in your executive who's actually fabulous at putting that sort of stuff together. So using that expertise. This results in creating a strong bond among the team members, which you want to have, and helps create opportunities for capacity building. So as we said, getting people to do jobs and not have one person or two people feeling to do everything, which in turn will lead to increased productivity. The team accomplishes challenges as a single entity, and their collective will to deliver the best results is driven by shared values and a sense of integrity. So it's not I achieved this for the county, it's we achieved this. So yes, there might be somebody heading up fixtures, but because we've all discussed it as an executive and what's the right way to go, yes, they might need to go and deliver on it, but we've achieved it. We are the county executive, we put thoughts into it, etc., etc. So again, the honest questions you need to ask yourself as a county executive, if you'd really want to be seen as a high performance team, have you matched the person in the role to their skill set? Because if they're not, they won't do the role that you want them to do, but they also won't enjoy the role. So if you have somebody in as PRO, for example, and they don't use social media, and social media is not the be all or end all, but it is at the minute in relation to a PRO role in the county, they don't have the skill set to do that role. Do you have a treasurer who can't work with numbers. Straight away, somebody else is going to have to do that, and the same as the PRO, somebody else is going to have to do it. So you're looking for additional help, but you haven't matched the person to the skill set. So we need to question, have we been matched to the right skill sets? Do you ask each other for help to utilise the strengths of others? So yes, I might be the secretary, but I'm really good on Twitter. So that doesn't mean the PRO can't ask me, listen, any way you can help out with this section, because maybe that's an area that I really like. So we see ourselves as a team, so we know our own direct role, but we also see how we can help other members of the team. And do we work together to achieve results rather than individually? And certainly something you don't want in your county executive is nearly mini executives or mini meetings outside of meetings. It's very much, okay, this is the meeting. We don't discuss it in minis outside. We don't discuss in minis afterwards. Whatever's agreed here, we're going to go after it and achieve the results together rather than individually. So that mutual respect is so, so important. So again, questions you need to honestly ask yourself as an executive. The third one, shared vision. So high-performing teams share the same values and vision. And we don't mean that you have to have completely the same values in life and everything else, but in relation to working on the executive, it's your clear vision and what's the values that's going to get you there. They work together as a motivated team towards this vision and a common objective while being focused on delivering the best results and solutions. So again, in LGFA terms, what does that mean? Okay, as an executive member, as an executive, do you know what your collective vision for the year is? I know it's harder this year because we're all up the left, but even there's things that you can still set out a vision for what you hope to see at the end of the year. And what we're doing tonight is not just for this year. Hopefully you'd be doing the same if you were sitting next year. But do you know what your collective vision for the year is? Have you discussed this vision or just been told? Because we talked about the mutual respect in the slide before. It's not being told by one person that this is what it's going to be. It's so important you sit as an executive and say, okay, what's our priorities? Where do we want to be? Where's the vision at the end of the year? What's the goals? So that you come up with it together, because you all have strengths to bring to it. And then a key one that can be forgotten about. Have you scheduled checkpoints for during the year to review the progress? Because what happens in many cases is come up with these great things at the start of the year that you want to happen. And then the next time you discuss them is at the end of the year and go, geez, no, we didn't do that. Oh, no, we did do that. No, we didn't do that. But it should have been looked at a checkpoint during the year. And what the checkpoint does too is it keeps you all going towards the same vision. So that high performing team constantly during the year is looking towards the same goal, the same vision as they go through it. And the final one on this, that open and clear communication. So the leader of such a team cites the team's vision and goals clearly and relentlessly. So maybe it is that you know your three main objectives are X, Y, and Z. At every executive meeting, the chairperson should be saying, remember, our three main things are X, Y, and Z. Yes, you're going to discuss other things, but they must be kept on the agenda so that you're all kept very much going in the direction that you want to go. An open channel of communication always exists between the members and their leader that creates an environment of constructive criticism and feedback. People should never be afraid to give input. They're part of the team. Will all the input be taken on board? No, that's where you discuss and see, okay, well, as a team, what do we think is the best way forward? But if you have somebody who can't put input in, or every time they put it in, it's fired back, they'll just stop giving it to you. And you could end up missing a gem in relation to your county executive. So again, in your LGFA terms, is the chairperson clear on your vision? So I've asked if you've all been clear, but in particular is the chairperson clear, because they're the ones who have to make sure that the team remains on track to where you want to go. So they must be clear on what it is and shouldn't waver from people's opinions and everything else from outside. This is your executive and where you need it to go. Does the chairperson ensure the team focuses on priorities rather than distractions? So yes, there could be 40 other things come in, but you don't start on number 40 when you need to get 1, 2, and 3 done. You will have other stuff to do, but what's the priorities instead of the distractions all the time? And do all team members feel they can communicate open and honestly? And I think if you're a team member on this tonight and you don't feel you can communicate open and honestly, I do genuinely think that's a conversation you need to have with the executive. And I know I've spoke to a few executives recently, even in relation to at the start of the year, having even a Teams meeting like this and sitting and chatting, nothing about fixtures or anything else, just about their own workings. And in relation to, like, what's the expectations of when you should send stuff to the secretary for the agenda of an executive meeting, how long people should be speaking at it, what reports should be presented at it, and even the simple things like what time should you not be sending WhatsApp messages or text messages to each other. So all that sort of stuff, but making sure that you can communicate that open and honestly is really, really important. And I know there's a lot in this, but we will send you the slides afterwards. But the team performance model, and we just thought this was really kind of set the tone in relation to when your team is getting together. And I keep referring to your executive as a team because you are a team, gets together at the start of the year. So if you look at number 1 there, the orientation, so that why am I here? And I know there's a lot of executive members might be asking them that straight after the AGM, why am I here? But if that question doesn't get answered, so if it's unresolved, which you'll see on the left, there's disorientation, there's uncertainty, and there's fear. What am I after getting myself into? What am I supposed to be doing? But if it is resolved, they have that clear sense of purpose. They feel part of the team and they feel a member of the executive. So that step 1 alone can make such a difference in how somebody feels coming into your executive. And you'll see at the bottom that creating and sustaining phase, and there's more writing in that, but I'll let you go through that in your own time and as we go through it. But step 2, trust building. So yeah, or I'm orientated in, I'm in it now, but now I need to start building trust. So who are you? So getting to know each other. And if it's unresolved, you'll always be treating each other with caution, with a little bit of mistrust, and maybe you might feel that somebody has a facade up, that is it really them? Whereas if it does get resolved, and we'll talk a little bit about team building in a second, you have that mutual regard. You don't have to absolutely love all the other members of the executive, but that mutual respect, and that you feel you can rely on them. And that's a big thing in relation to it. So people want to know who they're going to be working with, what's their expectations and their agendas. That's very much around the trust building side. The third one there, goal clarification. So what are we doing? So we've talked about this a little bit already. Do we know what are the priorities, which is the key thing in relation to this one? Again, if they're unresolved, look at some of the things you'll have there, like skepticism, irrelevant competition. Okay, some of the stuff that'll come up, apathy, if it's unresolved. But if it is resolved, explicit assumptions, clear integrated goals, everybody knows where it is, and a shared vision. And as we go through these, like where you ideally what you'd love to see with your executive is that you start at orientation, you go to trust building, goal clarity, so that everybody's coming with you to get to this high performance level. The fourth one there, that commitment. So at some point discussions need to end and decisions must be made how resources, time, staff will be managed. So in your case, how all your members will be managed and those agreed roles. So it's the clear role descriptions. And if it's the how will we do it? If it's unresolved, there's dependence on somebody else. There's resistance to change or resistance to do something. But if it is resolved, there's assigned roles. Everyone clearly knows their role descriptions and everything else. There's allocated resources. So what do you need to do your role? And there's decisions made. So you're not going from one meeting to the next with the same things and no decisions made. So that's the commitment piece. Step 5, and we're nearly there to the high performance, is implementation. So who does what, when, and where? So teams really turn the corner when they begin to sequence work and settle who does what, where, and when. And there's 2 things in this as well, because you know yourself from working as an executive, you can feel, oh geez, the 2 of us is after doing that, or we dropped the ball there, none of us done it. So this is very much about having clarification on who is doing what. If it's unresolved, there could end up being conflict or confusion. So even if you think of that situation I gave you there could be conflict between me and Paula because the 2 of us have done the same thing. Or there could be complete confusion because neither of us done it. Non-alignment, missed deadlines because you weren't sure who was supposed to do it. But if you do resolve it, there's clear processes, who's supposed to be doing it, there's alignment. I know Paula's responsible for X, Y, and Z, and she knows I'm responsible for A, B, and C. So we know there's going to be clear alignment as we go along, and there's disciplined execution. And if you go back to the second or third slide I showed you there, the amount of stuff a county executive has to do, how important is it to have that alignment and clear processes if you really want to get the most out of your team? And the final one, which is where we're all going to be after doing tonight's webinar, is high performance, which is the wow. Okay, so when methods are mastered, a team can begin to change its goals and flexibility to respond to what comes up. And let's face it, in our environment, there is flexibility needed, but the team can really have that wow factor. So you've all been there where there's something really massive has been achieved and you sit back and go, geez, that was brilliant. Okay, there was that wow factor and you were part of it. And that's where the high performance piece comes in. So again, if it's unresolved, if that wow factor's not there, there might be an overload on somebody. And that's what the officers say, I feel I had to do everything. Okay, whereas instead of it being split out and people knew what it was, or this disharmony because somebody's taken all the credit for something that was the team. The resolve part then though, the interaction you get, the synergy, you surpass your results. So you get to your 3 priorities and more because everybody knew what they were doing, when to do it, because of all the steps they've done before that. And then step 7 there, the renewal, the why. Why continue? So I've done the year, but why would I want to continue? And that's really important because teams are dynamic and some people will drop in and out and you might need to go back to orientation for some people. But you'd hope to think because all this was done, you've worked as a high performance team, you've all got with the wow factor that people actually want to stay in relation to it. So that's the renewal part. So for that, the unresolved piece, it could be boredom, it could be burnout, and some people just need a rest. But if it is resolved, that recognition, celebrating together of what you've achieved, change the mastery, so changing what you're doing, how you're doing it, and then that staying power, that there's not as much turnover maybe of officers in a role, that there's staying power, or there's more succession planning able to happen because you know what's actually going to happen. So I know there's a lot of text in that diagram, but it's a very effective one for teams if you can start off right from the orientation. So if you skipped to step 5, which happens in many cases, and you start naming who has to do what, when, where, etc., but you don't have all the other stuff, look at the amount of stuff you've missed out on, even in relation to, do you trust each other, do you know each other, all that sort of stuff. So getting that part is really important, and some of the little team buildings we have in that will be key. Paul, I don't know, Yvette, and you want to come in on that one?
I am still here, Lynn. No, yeah, I like, and again, I suppose even you talking through it and going through the various steps, and I suppose even as you're talking through it, you're like, oh yeah, but very often you are inclined to get straight to that implementation stage and start dishing out the work left, right and center and going, we have to get this action. And you do forget the other parts. But as you say, if you put the time and effort into making sure those other parts are right, the next angle or that road up towards that high performance nearly happens naturally and without you realizing it happening, because you've done the groundwork on all the other stuff and it's been so important. Like, and I suppose the other side is it doesn't happen overnight. It does take time, especially I suppose that trust and I suppose the clarification and making sure everyone is working like that. But it is really important. And even as you said there, I know myself, sometimes you have an automatic nearly default because you want to get stuck in and get stuff done. But yeah, it is that little reminder to yourself. So it's a really good model. I liked even you talking through it there. So yeah, no, it's really good. Nobody has come in with any questions or queries on it, but no, I think it's an excellent one, and one nearly to keep to the side or to go back on every now and again to remind yourself. Or to look when something does go wrong, Lynn, to go back and go, oh yeah, okay, because I think that's a very glaring thing to go, yep, that probably wasn't 100% right before we move to the next stage. Like, so yeah, no, excellent.
Yeah, and it's a good way, as you said, Paul, that if somebody is maybe feeling that mistrust, you can now see, well, actually, it's just step 2 that we've got wrong. So being able to identify where in the high performance pathway as such that you went wrong is really important too. So the benefits of a high performing team, they're going to be focused and engaged, as we said, because there's a common goal now, and you can see through all that, there's a common goal with shared values, that complementary skill sets that you can help each other out, and under leadership that fosters open communication. And that word's going to be said over and over again, but it also recognizes and rewards performance. So like even congratulating each other on the little achievements. That's a massive thing in relation to it. And I know it's such an Irish thing. I do genuinely believe that, because even you see with our volunteer awards and we read the stories and it's phenomenal, and they're like, I'm so embarrassed to get this, like, it should have been so and so and it should have been so and so. But no, you done phenomenal stuff. So recognizing each other and congratulating each other is really important. They're motivated and have equal stakes in the outcome, because you all feel part of the team. You don't feel there's just 2 or 3 people off and yeah, we're here in name, but we're not really part of the team. So that sharing of values and a feeling of trust, and that will get greater productivity. You'll have motivated officers who are innovative, and that can really be the gem, I think, in all of this, because you have some officer who's really motivated, feels part of it, has a light bulb moment, and if they don't feel part of it, they'll keep that light bulb moment to themselves. But if they do, they're going to be on to you straight away saying, listen, here's an idea I had. This is something that would be brilliant for the county. And that's where the innovation will come into it. And because of all of this, because you have a really effective team and it can be seen, it'll also result in increased engagement with clubs and members, which is where we all want to get to in relation to our high performing team. So for team bonding, how do you get this stuff? And it's bringing you back to some of those things about getting to know each other and getting to trust each other. As I said, agreed timelines to work as a team, including, so that little meeting, as I mentioned, that you might have. And it could be items such as set meeting dates and times, because people have a life outside of this. So that you know when these things are going to happen. It's not that you're getting a phone call to say, unless of emergency, of course, we have a meeting tomorrow night. Like, people have stuff to organise, so that there's set meeting dates and times, and that everybody on the executive is told about them, and somebody doesn't find about it a week later. So that's really important. That permitted times is said for phone calls, texts, etc. And I think particularly, well, for both, whether you're a volunteer or staff, that is important, because it's not good enough to come out of a meeting at 12:30 at night and pick up the phone to ring somebody. That's just not good enough. So there should be things around, well, when should we, or you're sound asleep and 3 o'clock in the morning, a WhatsApp message of a funny thing comes in, and like, yeah, it'd be great when you see it the next month, but it's not great when it woke you up in the middle of the night and it's from whatever you had set up in relation to a group of the county execs. So just coming up with permitted guidelines for yourselves is important too. How to include items on the agenda. So if you want something as an executive member on the agenda, how do you include it, when, what, how many days beforehand, etc. And the clear role descriptions, and hopefully from your trainings for each individual officer, that has helped you a lot more clarity in your role, which is what we were trying to achieve. And then don't forget, away from the committee room, how do you get this bond? And I know we have no games right at the minute, and we would love to be back out in the pitches, but maybe it's a time to do some of these things. And yeah, we are stuck in the virtual world at the minute, but like having a little fun quiz among yourselves, even a watch party, throwing something on, a treasure hunt. I know Paula will vouch for this, but we done a treasure hunt with the staff one day, and I had them running like Aegis around their houses looking for stuff. But it was just something that was a little bit different. But what it was about was getting to know each other and getting to have a bit of crack, and not just always be talking work, work, work. So trying to do something different with yourselves to get to know each other is really, really important. And then when we do get back face to face, I mean, how often does your county teams, etc., go and do team building activities? But maybe there's something you could do as an executive for team building. A bit different at the minute, obviously, within restrictions and everything. So hence it does say face to face and when it's allowed. A social gathering, I think the whole country will be going on social gatherings when we're allowed as well. But just taking time away, make that time for it that's away from the committee room. As I said, you don't all have to be best friends, but it is important that bond is there between your executive, that you're all working towards the same goals, both in the committee room and away from the committee room, just to think a little bit differently and see people in a different light.
Before you move on that one, Lynn, just a query, and obviously something maybe that's come up since really probably since COVID, but somebody's just asking, what is a watch party? So
yeah, a watch party. So
the mad stuff that you be doing, Lynn Savage. So I think you need to explain yourself on that one.
Yeah, so things like a watch party could be, maybe you have a game of a county game or a club game or something where you could actually put it on. So maybe you're set up on a Teams and the game is on YouTube or something. You can sit and watch it together. Or it could be a film that you put on Zoom or Teams, whatever, and you watch it together, because you're able to chat to each other through it or comment through it. So it's really just about watching something and having a bit of crack. I won't mention a few drinks, Paula, because that might be your watch parties. You're blaming me for them. But it's just about trying to, I suppose, a bit of crack outside of the committee room.
Yeah, no, and I think again, very important, Lynn, as you said, we've done various, I suppose, different challenges, treasure hunts, different things as a staff to, I suppose, keep us engaged and bonded as a staff. And as you say, that there is the other side of just not work, but you know, that you can mix. And I suppose like that, everyone here is volunteers. They're doing this because they actually enjoy it. So it is nice to do something like that to, from your own point of view as a time out. There's another query in just Lynn, or another question, which I think I suppose is very relevant, that remembering that we are all volunteers, how do you encourage or impress members the need for a stronger work ethic to get things done over the line?
So a work ethic within your committee, is it, Paula? Or
yeah, I think so. So how do you, like, obviously, as they're saying, it is all volunteers. You probably, as a, from a staff or working point of view, yeah, we have goals and objectives and we have to achieve them to get our wages, I suppose, at the end of the week. These are volunteers. How can you, I suppose, get them to buy into that work ethic to get stuff done at a county level?
yeah, and I think a big thing is the communication still comes back to a big part of this. And Paula, you can come into this in a second as well. But if you're having regular meetings, and even at the minute where I know there's no activities happening off the pitch, etc. But if you leave a period of maybe 3 months where you don't speak to each other, well, then it's going to feel like nobody's doing anything. Whereas there's a lot of stuff could be done now that you don't ever get the time to do it. So if you have regular meetings and you're putting down the name of the person beside it of what has to be done, it now they feel, I suppose, an onus of responsibility because they know at the next meeting that's going to come up. Now, if I was in a group where nothing's assigned to me, it's just presumed that I'm going to be doing it, and I know it's not going to come up in the next meeting, why would I be motivated? Because nobody's even checking on it. Nobody knows if I've done it. They couldn't care less. And I'm getting no gratitude out of it. Whereas at least if we all left those regular meetings going, okay, the chairperson, here's your action points, secretary, here's yours, PRO, here's yours. And then the first thing we're doing at the next meeting is going, okay, how do we get on with those action points? Well done. Paula, do you know what? You actually surpassed yourself in relation to what you're able to do that, and really becoming that group that you can see the whole lot versus, okay, I'm the development officer and the rest of the executive doesn't know for the whole year what happens in relation to development. That can be very demotivating on the person that's there because they don't feel part of it. So I think the big thing for getting that work ethic is at times you do need to assign work programs to them to get the work ethic out of them. But then when it's done, give the praise that's for it so that they feel motivated to do the next thing that's assigned as well. And being fair in how that's shared out. Paula, you might have some more on that as well.
Yeah, no, I think, yeah, absolutely, Lynn, you've hit nail on the head about like the workload and sharing that out. And I think anyone that was on our chairperson workshop as well, and we talked about the chair setting the tone. What is the tone of the committee? Is the tone of the committee, we are a working committee, we all do get stuck in, and this is what we do, and this is where we contribute. And as Lynn has already touched, people feel they can contribute and raise ideas and that they're going to be taken on board? Or is it a case that you're like, oh yeah, we go from one committee to another, Lisa's all the update on everything she's done, and we all go, great, Jesus, fair play, Jesus, Lynn is a tremendous worker, fair play to her. Or we're involved, and I suppose a bit like that as well, signing it out, but also maybe it's a case, well, Lynn and Paula, will you go off and work together? So then you're also encouraging me, I have to liaise with Lynn, and we have to work with Lynn, the two of us have to get that over the line and come back and report it to the committee. And like we said, to the chairperson's role is to make sure everyone does contribute to a meeting, and if they notice around the table that Lynn hasn't spoken all night, call on Lynn. Lynn, is there something to contribute? Or Lynn, what's your thoughts on that? So again, making Lynn feel comfortable that she wants to contribute and that she can contribute. So it's the culture you're creating and it's the tone you set as well. I think that's really, you know, when you go into a committee that, whoa, these people mean business, this is how things are done and this is how we get on. And as you said, Lynn, you're handed out work on the first night and this is my role and this is what we expect from you in your role. And I think you probably are covering that about the expectations of roles, and we've covered that in the individual roles in as well. What are the expectations, and as you say, what's the task to be done and how do we get them done? But yeah,
and I think you hit a good point there too, Paula, around like teaming people up. And even as a full executive, like, yes, you have your individual role to do, but is there one team-based thing that you can do as well that really brings everyone into it? And you can see it counties at the minute. I know it's downtime, but there's a lot of them doing fundraisers and stuff together as groups. So obviously that's something that a lot of people sat down together and planned, and were given different things out of it. So even during this downtime, like having think tanks, as you said, and maybe pair people up, because that can motivate yourself, that you don't feel on your own, as you said. That's a really good point. Yeah, so that's just some of the team bonding things, and we might hear some watch parties. You'll all be watching the rugby together at the weekend now at the watch party, and taking bets as to when the first score is going to be, etc. But it is a bit of fun. It's just to
You're
try
just
and
looking for an invite there now to the first one.
anyone who wants to bring me to the watch party, I'm available. Okay, so the second little part, and we've only a few slides on this, is remembering that you can't do it yourself. And by that, I don't mean just you individually, but you as an executive, that you do need to build networks around you to help you achieve your goals. And I got this book recently, and I know people are, Paula says she thinks I've lost the plot with my quotes and stuff at the minute. But I did love this picture where it says, "What's the bravest thing you ever said?" said the boy, and "Help," said the horse. So it can be a brave thing to say, to ask for help. But that's what these networks are doing. They're helping you achieve your goals. So going to throw it to you again, just to make sure everyone's still active and listening in. What networks do you think are important to build as a county executive? So what different groups do you think it's important that you can link into that could help you achieve your goals? So if you type them in the chat, and Paula feedback on some of them there. I know you love those little pictures, Paula.
Yes, I was actually meant to ask you, did you get that book? Because I had seen a good bit on some of those quotes, Lindsay, that were going around. But I think it's a really good one. And as you say, it's also that first step to feeling, I don't know, better as well, to be able to hold your hand up and say, yeah, I actually need help. And you automatically have this massive sense of relief because you've suddenly went, whoa. And I think it's okay to, and God, if it's anything the past year has taught us, it's okay to say, I need help, or I don't know how to do something, like, because I don't think everyone expects you to know something, and especially in what we do. I think every day is a learning day within ladies football.
If we weren't able to ask help even of each other, we'd be getting nothing done.
Absolutely, definitely. So some people have come in with what networks. So what are we asking? What networks are important to build as county? So people have said about schools, local businesses, delegating work among committee members, social media. Somebody else has said all various committees, development, fixtures, finances, linking with Camogie, particularly for their secretary and their fixtures. Somebody obviously said communication is important to have.
Yeah.
So yeah, like, I suppose, as you say, or as someone always says, who's your most important stakeholder? I think you can never look beyond somebody who's in front of you. They're a potential stakeholder. Everybody is, as we say, it's important. They're getting shy on you now, Lynn. They're easing up, I think. Well, I suppose some of those, they're just typing long ones for us. Links with businesses, provide updates, keep them in the loop, not just avail of their sponsorship. And that's really key, isn't it?
And that's something we're going to nail there in a second as well, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's massive. Anyone that's prepared to listen, absolutely, that's somebody after my own heart. I think it's really important because you don't know who you're making an impression on and where, as you said, Lynn, they may come back and be able to be a benefit and help to you in the future. May not be today, but it's always like, as you said, Lynn, we might use them now, we might use them in 6 months' time.
We keep note of them.
We keep note of them. That's Lynn's favourite word, keep note of them now. And link with the clubs, absolutely. Clubs are a massive part of our network.
So there's a huge network there, as you can see, that you can potentially build, and we have some of them up on this, and I know there's more, but it's just to show an example of the amount of people that's there. So as you said, your club, your members, your sponsors, the local sports partnerships, and they are somebody who can be forgotten about, and we'll discuss them in a second. The GEA, Camogie, which was mentioned, your match officials, your players, the media, the general public, that would include the schools, etc. So there's a massive amount of networks. And instead of you looking at this as, okay, I suppose, where can we go to them? It's that mutual thing of how can we help each one of those, and then how will they be able to help us in turn? And that's what a network will do. It'll help each other in relation to it. So when we look at this networks, we're going to give you 6 steps, and this is bringing this to a close in relation to building a strong network. So the first step, focus on the right people. So you do need to identify what you need support for and concentrate on the people who you know will be able to make a difference for you as a county. So there's no point in just contacting somebody for the sake of it. So you need to discuss as an executive, well, what is the areas that we actually do need support and help for? So for instance, if you had a really good sponsor of your underage teams, well, there's no point in sitting discussing and going and contacting a load of people who are just orientated towards underage when that's already signed, sealed and delivered. So you need to have a look and see what you need support for, and then go after the right people who are going to make a difference for you as a county. So that's the first one. Focus on the right people. Then create win-win situations. And this kind of goes back to even the sponsorship that was mentioned a second ago. And it's important that both you and the other party gain equally when networking. So if I was networking with Paula and I was constantly wanting my side of the bargain but giving her nothing, that's eventually going to stop. So the benefit, if you benefit more than the other person, he or she will feel cheated or used. Now, Paul, I hope you don't feel used. There's mutual benefit there. But when that happens, you won't go back to being able to build that long-term relationship. So creating that win-win situation that we can always go back to that person we've created the network to. And yes, at an executive level, maybe you're there for long-term, but maybe you have short-term projects that you're trying to get somebody in for. And if you have those short-term projects, if you've created that real win-win situation with somebody and that short-term project has to be done again, of course they're going to say yes to you because you both got something out of it. So it's really important when you're looking at the network, making sure the win-win situation's there. So they're the first 2 steps. The third one, give before you receive. So in a networking situation, the people automatically expect you to ask them for help. So you know yourself, if you see somebody ringing or you see an email coming through, you're like, okay, what do they want? what's happening here? So it's always the first thing that's asked is what do they want? But actually, if you turn that round and offered some support straight away, your networking partner will be grateful and they'll want to return the favor. So like was mentioned earlier, how can you help a sponsor instead of just asking for money? So for a lot of people, when they go to approach a sponsor, the first thing they go in is, we want a sponsor for our senior jerseys. We want a sponsor for a competition. So you're starting off with why you want the sponsor instead of, listen, look what we are. Look what we can offer you. And going after that before you even mention what the sponsorship's going to be for. So really seeing what they can get out of you and what you can bring to them. And that goes right back to any sort of a networking. It could be with your local sports partnership, of what you can bring to them. Look at the network you can bring them to, local people, local communities across the board. And then, okay, how can you help us in return? So the give before you receive is a massive thing. Become a connector. So you don't always have to gain something in a networking relationship, but maybe it's connecting you to somebody else, or because you've connected them to somebody else, they want to do something from it. So you can introduce people who can benefit from one another, and it's just as effective. So you can build a strong rapport with multiple people, and together you can help achieve more. So for instance, you might just connect the local sports partnership with your clubs. So at a meeting, you might invite the head of the local sports partnership in to give a 10-minute presentation to your clubs. Now, are you as an executive going to benefit out of it? Maybe not, but your clubs certainly are, because they'll find out what the local sports partnership does, and your local sports partnership will, because those clubs will really help them achieve their goals. You become the connector, so they both want to, both see you have done them a mutual benefit, and they will in turn help you out as well. But you've became a connector to build rapport between the different bodies. And the final 2 steps in it, remember to reconnect. So we've all had people who contact us out of the blue after years of never touching base. And straight away when that happens, you typically don't want to go out of your way for them because you haven't put any effort into sustaining the relationship. So like that, as Paula said, somebody comes and they're not able to help you at that time. or they did help you, and then you literally haven't touched base with them again. And all of a sudden, something along the same thing is needed, and you go back to them. The chances are that they're going to not want to help you out because of what happened the previous time. So it's so important to reconnect with them, even if you don't need them at the time, to stay connected with them in some way. Or as that person who might say, listen, I just can't do it at the minute because I haven't time in X, Y, or Z. Like we said, bank their details and come back to them again this time next year. I know you said you were on top of your head, you'd set up a new business, and just wondering have things changed any, because we'd actually love your skill set in relation to what we're going to do here. So they'll think that you remember them as well. So you stay in contact with them. So it keeps your network strong. And the final point, be unforgettable. So how many people do we all come in contact with each day? We're not going to include COVID, because if it's me, it's zero sitting in a house. Although plenty on all of these. But in normal circumstances, how many people do you come into contact with each day? But more importantly, how many would you say actually made a lasting impression on you? And that's the key thing for you as executive members. You want to make a positive, lasting impression that people, even if they can't help you then, will come back, but they'll want to contact you to keep that strong network too. The ones that ingrained themselves on you probably did something to stand out from the crowd. So ask yourselves as an executive, if you're going and contacting any of these people you need in your strong network, even your clubs, what can you do to ingrain that they'll want to work with you? How can you do this? So be unforgettable, instead of them thinking it's just the same old, same old. For your sponsors, getting something that they've never got before to keep that network. And I know I mentioned on, I think it was a sponsorship webinar when I was a GPO years ago, I got a jersey at the end of the year signed by all the kids. And I still have it framed. It was something that will ingrain with me. That club was ingrained with me. And I just think as a sponsor, if I had something like that, that actually shows that it wasn't just me handing over the money and then nothing thereafter. So how can you make yourself stand out for the crowd, that for every other 40 people who walk in the door wanting to link and become a partner or set up that network, that they'll actually say, no, well, I actually already have this and I want to keep it, that you're always there, or if something comes up for them, you're the first person in their mind to get in contact with as well. So be unforgettable. And those 6 steps will really, really help you build a strong network to try and help you do your roles a little bit easier. And to sum it all up, I suppose, we want you over the next few weeks and months to look at your successful team, your high performance team. So if at the end of the season, there's reviews always done with county teams and everything else, but for your own executive, if you were doing an end of season review or purpose to see the things work, or even in 6 months' time at your checkpoint, of all the things we did in the last 6 months, so these are some of the questions you'd ask yourself. What are we most proud of? And it's important to be positive. What are we most proud of? What are they? What else? Make a list. So all the things we're proud of. How did we manage to do it? So how did we do it? Because we can learn from that to be able to bring it forward. What were our strengths? So what do we really come to the fore of? And that's where you really should be complimenting each other and seeing how you did work as a high performance team. What difficulties or problems have we tackled successfully? So again, lessons learned, things that you're going to be able to bring forward. How did we do it? What was helpful to you to get the best out of the team in the last year? So both to you as an executive member and then for the full team in general. Because if it was helpful to you, it has to stay there for next year, because that was something that made the team tick. And then write down what you specifically appreciated about the county executive and how they helped. Because we talked about waiting on somebody to say well done or whatever, but we need to start doing it ourselves as well to make sure that we really are high performing. And I know it's not easy to write down stuff all the time, but like one line to show what it meant is massive. And I think it's something that could really help. So as I said, it could be at your checkpoint, it could be at the end of the year, but having a look at some of these questions to see, did you really perform as a high performing team? And what made you perform as a high performing team? And this high performance team model, not going through it, but it sums up everything we're after talking about, because there was a common purpose, which we mentioned, that reason for why you should cooperate in the first place. You clear roles. So between interdependence and then cooperation. accepted leadership. So yes, you do need to have a chairperson who's going to chair the meeting and everything else. There is that accepted leadership in relation to it, that whatever's agreed and we agree as a team, we'll go forward for it. That there was effective processes, so everyone knew what they were going to do, how they were going to do it. So come back to that graph, how are we going to do it? What's going to be done? Who's going to do it? That there was solid relationships. So as I said, it's not about everyone loving each other, but that there's trust there, that mutual respect. And then the key for bringing it all together is excellent communication. You have to work as an executive. It shouldn't be, as I said, many executives or many teams and many things happening outside. It's excellent communication between you all as an executive and you all working together in relation to that. So that high performance team model really shows it on that. And Paul, I don't know if you've went on that before we showed the last little video, but it's just to kind of bring it all together.
Yeah, no, and I think it's a nice summary to how to do it. And I suppose the way, and I actually really like the wording of a checkpoint, Lynn, and like to do a checkpoint midway through the year. I suppose the way I often describe it is like if you're going on a journey from here to even Galway, and there's a detour on the road that brings you up, I don't know, by Longford or that, do you end up in Mayo, or do you get back on track and get back to Galway? And I think that's where your checkpoint comes in, because very often, as you said, Lynn, we can set out plans at the start of the year, we get stuck into it, we're all doing whatever, and suddenly it's like, oh yeah, that plan, remember we really wanted to achieve this because it was going to make a difference. And that's why you put something in a plan, because it's going to make a difference to you. Who's keeping checkpoint of that? Who is the person to go, right, hang on, doing great work over here, but we need to come back and focus on this because that's going to contribute to the bigger picture. So I suppose it is, as you said, Lynn, between the clear goals, the common purpose, and even the accepted leadership, the leader is coming back to bring that, I suppose, common goal and keep them on track. That there is no, even if there is a detour, how do we get back on track to what we want to achieve at the end of the year? But doing those simple questions, Lynn, that you said for the board to look at and sit down and do it. But again, I think somebody on the board has to take ownership to do that. And who's going to be that person to take that ownership to make sure you are doing it and that you do your checkpoints halfway through.
Yeah, perfect. No, some really, really, really good points there. To really bring it all together and summarize, because I know there's a lot of information, as you said, that was thrown in there. So we are going to show a little video just after this one. But as I said, what we do want you to think, and we'll give you an opportunity for questions just after the little video. But we are hoping that if we were sitting here next year and we're incredibly enthusiastic about the past year, that the questions we'd hope you're asking yourself is, what would we say happened? We're so enthusiastic as an executive because this is what we done. What excited us? And do think about that now, because if there are things that excite you, well, then you should be starting them as your priorities and putting the plan in place, because you know you'll be excited by them by the end. So have a think about what would excite you so that you can put those as your priorities and start driving forward from them as an executive. So here's a little video just on teamwork, just for a few minutes. It'll help both of us rest our voices for a second. And then we'll just take some questions if there's any, and we're done.
The Oilers are a perfect 4-0.
One more item for you when you get a chance. We'd like it to stir up your cryo tanks.
How good can a team be? Seriously, how powerful is teamwork? Great teamwork. I mean, really ask that question. Who defines the limit? And what if we were to push that edge? Stop to think about this for a moment and realize that every team that accomplished the untouchable, every team that got out there, every team that had done what had never been done before, they all had to break through. They all had to understand that there was this edge. And then they had to challenge the edge. And then they had to break through that invisible line. They all had to do it.
Through that group of incredibly talented people, bumping up against each other, having arguments, having fights sometimes, making some noise, and working together, they polish each other. And they polish the ideas, and what comes out are these really beautiful stones.
There's no other way to get through other than challenging your fears. Because in order for teamwork to be at its highest potential, everyone's got to have something on the line. You have to. Otherwise, you're only partway in. At the end of the day, you're going to need to trust those around you. To fully trust. This is about us. And you can count on me. I think about New Zealand, this country with under 5 million people. And they have the best rugby team in the world. The All Blacks. Consistently the best in the world. Or the Apollo mission. A group of people saying, we hear you. We've got you. And all of our talents are on the line to get you home. That's teamwork. Think about the Beatles. All of that music that we know of theirs, all of it, was made in about 8 years. Just 8 years. They were that incredible as a team. Great teams, I mean, they're not about individuals melting into the team. That's the mistake. People hear about the power of teamwork, and they think it's about losing yourself to the singular goal. They think it's about fully giving in to something bigger than you. You don't lose yourself. Great teammates, they don't lose themselves. They stand up. They say, I'm here. They choose to be in, and they choose to play their unique part. That's how it works. So then what's the breakthrough? What did those teams see to unlock the full power of teamwork? You know, that's the hard part. You can't see the edge. You actually don't know where it is until you cross over and look back and see where it was. That's why it's always easier. I mean, it's always easier to catch up than it is to raise the bar. Because the team that broke through, they marked the line. And now everyone else, they just need to get over that mark. The Patriots, Belichick, Brady, I mean, what they've been doing is so unbelievable because they keep raising the bar. They keep nudging it higher. So even if people catch up, it's too late. You know, Steve Jobs and Apple.
For the first time ever, I'd like to let Macintosh speak for itself.
They were operating in this abyss. I mean, they were out there in this vast unknown. So instead of breaking through, instead of seeing the line, you have to forget the line. It's just another limit. The marker in great teams is never external. Because you're out in this unknown. You're out in this unmapped territory. So instead, the power of teamwork comes from a belief. It comes from a mindset. We can't get satisfied by the breakthroughs. We can celebrate them. We should celebrate them, but we can't be satisfied by the limits. That's what humbles me the most about great teams. That's what humbles me the most about the power of teamwork. Because it's almost like you've got to operate in the darkness, knowing you're lighting the path for everyone else, and still heading out there, still pushing that edge. That's how to unlock the power of teamwork.
To copy at the point. And on the board, take
Okay, so I know that the video was a lot to do with it. You might think sports teams and stuff, but there was some really key messaging in there, which we thought was just a nice way to sum it up. And I suppose what we're trying to say is, yes, there's the stuff that has to be done all the time for executives, but that real high performing team of an executive with the ones who want to push themselves that little bit to be the first to do things, to make the breakthrough. And yes, that can only happen if the smaller things are in order and everyone knows what they're doing. So we look forward to working with plenty of those high performing teams over the coming year. So Paul, I don't know if there's any questions or People were doing the watch party with the video.
They're already planning their watch parties, Lynn. I think we've lost them all to that. No, I think just if people want to, I suppose, type in any chat or Q